everyone. Welcome back to the Hilltop podcast. Today we have the good fortune of being joined by Dr. Todd Guidry, president of Chaminade, to learn a little bit more about his life and background and also some of the priorities and future of Chaminade. Thanks for joining us, Todd.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I always like to start a little bit by just sort of getting to know you, and for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. Give us a little background on young Todd. Where were you born? What was life like in the early days?
I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My dad had a job that moved us around quite a bit. He was a chemical engineer by training and worked for a big chemical company for many, many years. So we left Baton Rouge at a young age. I think I was 2. We moved to Paducah, Kentucky. Lived there for a couple years till 3rd grade, and then I moved to Houston for 3 years. Then we moved back to Paducah, where I kind of finished out my my childhood through high school. Youngest of 4. Really great siblings, great parents, great home. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was a wonderful caretaker of us and great teacher for us. Devout, faith-filled people. So Catholic education, kindergarten all the way through college and all the graduate work and doctoral degrees.
So what were some of your interests? Were you an athlete? Were you an artist?
Yeah.
Were you what did you do?
A little of all of it. We were into sports. I had a brother who played college basketball and a brother who played college baseball, both briefly, but really very good at sports. I was the youngest. I kind of did what they did, so I was into baseball and I was into basketball. The high school I went to, I graduated with 56 kids, co-ed, and so I got to play a lot. But it certainly wouldn't have been at a place like Chaminade. So I was into baseball and basketball. Have loved golf since I was a teenager. Never competitive, but always loved it when I was a kid. Started playing guitar when I was 12. That's still a very important thing for me. Actually, I often think about the impact learning to play guitar has had on kind of where I am today. Real quickly, you learn to play guitar, get invited to play at Mass, meet people who I really liked through being involved at Mass, invitation to be a part of youth groups and study theology because I want to do that for a living, and so all because I learned to play guitar at a young age. So something that was really impactful to me. And something I still do every Sunday morning, play guitar at Mass, and have done that for the better part of 30 years probably. And love it. So, but a great home, a great childhood and upbringing. Really grateful for the moving. Some people kind of think that wasn't hard on us. At least it wasn't hard on me. I got to see different parts of the country a little bit and meet different people. And I think you learn to be a little more empathetic and compassionate when you know different cultures in different ways. So Louisiana is very different from Houston, which is very different from Paducah. And then I've moved a few times since graduating. So grateful for that. But great family, great parents, great siblings, good childhood.
Good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit there, I want to pull out the idea of wanting to study theology, wanting to teach that, and sort of how did your own Catholic faith, and maybe just elaborate a little bit on your involvement in a youth group and how that led you to the teaching profession in general.
I just remember being around people that were on fire for their faith in a way that was really relatable. And for another time probably, but I don't know that I think it's really important that we make faith experiences for young people relatable and engageable, or something that they can engage with and wrestle with. And that happened to me. Small little old Paducah, Kentucky had a really wonderful group of faith-filled adults who cared about young people. And that was a religion teacher of mine in high school and 2 priests in particular in our parish that made a lot of us, not just me, but a lot of us want to be a part of the life of the church in ways that we felt like we could still be cool and do it, and we had that, I think, great fortune to do that. And so when I was moving on through deciding what to do in college, I wasn't a great student in high school. Academics were never a priority for me, really. I worked hard to get B's kind of kid, and worked hard, was loose, you know. And so I thought, I really need to find something that I'm going to enjoy. And I liked Paducah's version of high school religion, which is not Chaminade's version of high school theology. You know,
what does that mean?
Well, it's like, you know, true, false, Jesus loves you kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
You know, it wasn't hard-hitting academics.
Sure.
So when I thought I was going to study theology, I'm thinking I'm going to study kind of ministry. Yeah. Well, come to find out at Xavier, where I went to college, studying theology was really academic. And I got through it, and I loved it. But I did that because I thought I could either teach or I could be in youth ministry. Those were kind of the two things I thought I was being called to do in some way. And was excited about both at the time. And so I went all in at Xavier on theology, got involved in life and campus ministry life at Xavier. Totally transformative experience there. And it really kind of continued to nourish and feed me in the way that high school did, but on a much larger scale. Which should have happened. So transformational experiences in Paducah, transformational experience of faith and ministry at Xavier left me really with only one choice of what I wanted to try to do when I grew up, which was to teach, yeah.
Good. So what were your next steps after Xavier? Did you jump right into teaching, or were you in the youth ministry side at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of take us through some of those early career years.
It's funny, and some of the kids know this because I had to present on this at Career Day. You know, in the COVID year, we didn't invite outsiders to speak on Career Day. We all did kind of our own thing about other jobs we've had. I moved to New Orleans. My mom and dad had moved back to Baton Rouge after I went to Xavier to retire. And so I left Cincinnati and decided to go be close to home. So I moved to New Orleans to go and get a master's degree in religious education from Loyola University of New Orleans, and needed a job while I was in grad school. So I called a friend whose dad was the general manager of a casino near Paducah. And the end result of that was that I ended up being a pit boss or a table game supervisor at the casino in New Orleans for 1 year. I did it for a year. So I'm a religious education grad school dropout.
For the casino.
For the casino business. Yes. I did it for a year, and honestly I loved it. I couldn't do it. I've said this before. It was in downtown New Orleans, right near the French Quarter. So it felt much more like a Las Vegas casino than a St. Louis casino. Sure. You know? Which meant it was always pretty fun. Rarely did you have kind of the person you're sitting there going, oh man, just go home. You know, you get that. I think that happens in some of the local casinos. That was not the case in New Orleans. But it was 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Thursday through Monday.
Wow.
And so it was exciting for a time, but it was not the lifestyle that I wanted to sign on to. So I left the casino after a year to go and teach high school religion and theology at a really great all-boys school in New Orleans, Brother Martin High School, which was a phenomenal experience.
Good. So what takes you from there? Why do you leave there? What's sort of the next steps beyond that?
So I was teaching at Brother Martin, started there in 2004. And really transformational experience. I mean, you know, exactly what you want for a first year experience. I was really young. I was 22 at the time. Phenomenal principal, phenomenal religion department, campus ministry department. They let me do everything. I got to coach. I got to do retreats. I got to do mass music. I loved the students. It was a big school, 1,600 kids, 8 through 12 at the time. And just loved it. At the time, you know, simultaneously teaching, kind of staying connected to my college girlfriend, who's now my wife, who was up here. She was actually in grad school at Mizzou. And so trying to figure out that whole part of life, which is you know, at that age is really important, trying to figure out who you want to be with and what kind of sacrifices you want to make to be with them. And Hurricane Katrina hit. I was teaching in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit. And kind of went through this, you know, aha moment of I really like that girl in Missouri, you know. And so that was my second year at Brother Martin. So got through the Katrina year and just decided, you know, either I'm going to marry her or I'm moving on. And so she got her first job out of grad school in Cincinnati. And I got a job teaching theology at Elder High School in Cincinnati. And so packed it up, left New Orleans, moved to Cincinnati for a year to try it out, see if we still liked each other. And it worked out great. So, and then after a year of her teaching or working in a hospital in Cincinnati, her mom got sick with cancer, pancreatic cancer, and she decided she wanted to move close to home, back home. And so she got a job at Cardinal Glennon. There was a job opening here, and that's how I ended up in St. Louis.
We'll get to that. Yeah. Awesome, cool. We'll get to the Chaminade years here in just a second, but you mentioned the hurricane and Katrina, and it just had, going through that right now in our country here again. Still, what was that impact like obviously for you, but also for the city and for? Yeah. Can you explain a little bit of that?
It was. I have a lot of thoughts on it. It was a difficult experience. From the school side, it was interesting. We had a brother school in Baton Rouge, so I evacuated to Baton Rouge. Just like most people, either went to Baton Rouge or Houston, except for the people who couldn't leave, which is the social justice issue that everyone's kind of discussed over the years about Katrina. Was that there was a large number of people who couldn't leave and were devastated by the storm. But we opened, what we ended up doing right around the storm was the third week of August, the end of August. So I think it was like it might have been the third day of school or something. It was very early in the school year. And we shut down the Friday. The storm came in on Sunday night, I think, Sunday or Monday. We shut down on Friday to evacuate. And we didn't reopen. And this was before texting and phone trees, and email was not widely used at the time, and so we just kind of disappeared. And I think we would call in to Brother Martin to see if there was a message on the phone line, and eventually we got some communication. I don't know if it was, I think we got a phone call from our department chair that said, hey, we're going to meet at Catholic High in Baton Rouge. And Catholic High was ran by the same religious order that ran our school, and so we met, and we're going to open a night school from 3:30 or 4 to 9:30 p.m. Sunday through Thursday at Catholic High. Wow. So Catholic High would do their thing, they'd move out, and we'd move in for all of our students who evacuated. It was the only time I ever taught girls, because we took sisters of current students. And it was awful. It was not my jam. But so we did that the whole first semester. We taught night school Sunday through Thursday.
And how many, approximately percentage of your students were there?
Half, maybe. That many? A couple hundred kids. You started the school year teaching. I think I was teaching sophomores and juniors, and then you come back and they give you all the seniors, because you only got 3 or 4 religion teachers who came back, because teachers were all over the country, and a number of them never returned. They just settled where they went. So I think I taught maybe sophomores and seniors or something, and teaching was not the priority. Sure. So traumatic for the kids. Really, the priority was giving them a safe place to come and be, that felt normal. And we taught, but it was really, myself and one of the brothers, who was one of the young guys too, we'd go out to breakfast or dinner with the kids after school, so at 10 o'clock at an IHOP in Baton Rouge with 20 kids, and just trying to make them feel safe and loved. It was awesome, and it's one of those silver linings of the experience. Kids are better at night, and they were awesome to do. And we had mass in the gym. I was the music guy, and there was no other musician on faculty, and so it was me and my guitar and kids, and I was just wrangling in students. You play piano? Come do this. You sing? Come do this. And so we'd have a little group of 10 or 12 kids doing music. It was okay. And then we went back in January, reopened. A little perspective on the school is a 2-story building with 1,600 kids. So you can imagine how big it is. And it got a foot of water. And so a foot of water is to the whole first floor. So it was this devastating experience to the school itself. But I was just some lowly old 23-year-old. So I just had a great time teaching at night. Went back in January, finished the year. I was a varsity assistant basketball coach, so we coached a quick basketball season.
But by January, you were already back in the building?
We were back in the building. New Orleans was reopened by then for the most part. Not doing well. As a matter of fact, you could still go to New Orleans and see 20 whatever years later, almost 20 years later, you could see devastation. I mean, it still has not been rebuilt in the poorer parts of the city. Yeah. So it was interesting. I was so, I think this is important, the impact on me was far less than the impact on most of lifetime residents of New Orleans. You know, I had my mom and dad down the road. I had a little old apartment. I didn't have anything else. I got to return to my job. I mean, people's lives were far greater impacted than me at all.
Sure.
You know, so it was an experience I had. It was not a life-changing experience like it was for New Orleans residents. Yeah.
Well, interesting stories. So yeah, let's jump ahead to your arrival at Chaminade. So you came here to follow your wife, your fiance, your girlfriend. What brought you? Was it literally just the job opening brought you to Chaminade, or was there, you don't have any other connection here necessarily?
Well, there was a service coordinator at the time. It was a guy by the name of Ray Harder, and Ray grew up with a good friend of mine from Xavier. And Nick had moved back. He's a teacher too. He had moved back to St. Louis after college, a couple years after college. And so I called Nick and said, hey, I'm moving to St. Louis. You want to live together? You know, because I needed a roommate. And he leads on a job. And Ray had told him that there was a shift happening in campus ministry at Chaminade. Mike Throw was the director of campus ministry, and Pete Vlahooten was the retreat coordinator. Well, Mike was going back into the classroom, and Pete was becoming the director, and so Pete's job opening was up. Ray was the service coordinator. Father Oscar was the chaplain. And so I applied for that. Good Friday of whatever year that would have been, 2007, I came to St. Louis from Cincinnati with Carolyn for Easter with her family. And I had a Good Friday interview with Pete and Ray and Father Oscar. Actually, it was just Pete and Ray. Oscar couldn't be there. And the rest is history. Yeah, I had a great interview. Loved Pete, loved Ray. Knew very little about the rest of the school, except that, you know, I was okay not going back into the classroom. And I thought campus ministry would be something I'd enjoy. And so it all worked out.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, did you have any connection with the Marianists before?
No.
You certainly went to a Jesuit college, and you mentioned you were with another order there in high school. So just maybe leaping forward a little bit, but what's your perspective on now, looking back, the Marianists versus, you know, what defines the Marianists? You know, we know the Marianist characteristics of education, et cetera, but sort of what's your sort of simple take on that?
It's, I didn't know anything about the Marianists. It took a couple years for me to really understand and appreciate what it meant to be at a Marianist school, and have fallen deeply in love with them, the charism, the order. I believe it is the best way to do school. Not that other ways are bad ways, but it works really well for us. It fits my personality and leadership style a lot. And so to me, what it means is a deep devotion to our faith, through a lens and an understanding of Mary's role in the life of the church and lives of people, but also with a high regard for community, for building respect among others, for understanding that everyone's got a voice and a seat at the table. You know, from a leadership perspective, that top down is not Marianist, but in fact it's consultative and collaborative. I really appreciate the Marianist way of involving people and really bringing the community together. And I think you see it so much with our students now, that they understand and feel the sense of family and community in really unique ways. So it's impacted me most from a leadership perspective, because there's a distinct way of leading a Marianist school in the Marianist charism. And I just soak that stuff up. I think it's so important. You know, the way we treat our students, and you see it every day, and teachers are so in it that they don't get to witness it the same way that I do, but the way our teachers interact with the kids and with our students, it's just remarkable. It's patient most of the time, and when it's always patient, that doesn't mean it's not firm. We have high expectations. The way we get our students there is, I think, in such a loving and compassionate way. I'm just so grateful for, again, that the student-teacher relationship that's fostered because we're a Marianist school. The way the students interact with each other. It takes them all 7 years, and even then sometimes they don't get it. But you see it by the time you're walking around at graduation. the respect and the love the kids have for each other, I think it's by design. It's I think because of who we are as a Marianist school. So it's a great way of doing school. Different. The others aren't bad, but it's a way I like a lot.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So what were some of those first years at Chaminade here like, learning the ropes? What other stuff were you involved in besides the retreat program? And who are maybe some of the personalities that kind of were legendary to you or impactful to you in some of those early days?
It was a different place. This is year 18. And so it's a lot of things have happened over 18 years, and for guys who've been here for 30 years, they'd say the same thing, and 10 years would say the same thing. But the early years are really impactful. I can't overstate the impact Pete Vlahoutin has had on me. His leadership and campus ministry, his patience with me. It was a new job. I was young. I was going through all the things you go through when you're trying to get married and figure all that out. And he was so patient. He taught me so much I thought I knew ministry well, and I didn't. Pete taught me so much about how to really engage students and draw them into their faith life in a way, back to being relatable, in a way that was relatable and engaging. Programming matters, but this all, you walk in, and teachers and kids walk into a junior retreat, and they think, oh, this is great. The 6 weeks leading up to the retreat is where the magic is. Mm-hmm. And same thing for Kairos. Kairos I spent most of my time on, a lot of my time on. It takes 8 weeks to get ready for that 4-day experience. And the 8 weeks before that with the students and the leaders and preparing them for the retreat, that's where the really good stuff happens in ministry. So I'm really grateful for the time in campus ministry, the community that was built at the time. It was me and Pete, Ray Harder, and Father Oscar. That was the team. Kevin Beckvar came into the service as service coordinator a couple years after Ray. So I got to work really closely with him and just loved it. Not unlike any other organization or job, the people you work with matter a lot, and we just had a great thing going, and it was a great experience. But you talk about the legends, first in those early years, Pete for sure had a huge impact on me. I grew very close with Mike Bander, who was the middle school principal. He and I just liked each other. I thought he was really good at his job. There are a lot of guys who are still here that took me under their wing when I was a young employee here, Mike Massa and Jim Eppie and Chris Chaburis, and I grew in admiration of them, just like people do still today. I started with a really great group of people. Michael Corte and Todd McMenemy came in that year with me, and others, Matt Crutchfield, who just left Chaminade. But so I found a little bit of a friend group that I liked. I became good friends with Eric Burge, and Mike Durkitz came in a year after, and so he and I were really good, very close, kind of trying to figure this out together. Jim Schulte was here when I had started. KB was here. Mike Francis, who would end up playing a really important role in my work for a long time. Mike Francis was here at the time. There are other legends I didn't know well, but I got to see work from afar, like Jim Pragg and Doug Taylor and those guys. Always friendly with them, always appreciated them, but certainly, and then of course, Lou Peters was the principal, who I really liked. Lou and I got along well. I respected him for the way he did things. And then of course, Father Ralph. I got to go on every Kairos retreat with Father Ralph for 6 years, and that's a unique access to him. He was not always that accessible. But he let his guard down a little bit on Kairos, and you got to know him, all the good and the bad, and you understood who he was as a person. And I just developed an immense amount of respect for him, the way he loved and cherished the kids and the students. Mm-hmm. So what makes maybe not just a Chaminade, but certainly that's what we're talking about, Chaminade, the retreat program, unique and obviously something different. We'll talk maybe a little bit later about, Catholic education versus a public school education or whatever. And so what's that what does that add to the difference, that the value that students and families get out of Chaminade or any Catholic school in that way? Mm-hmm. I think we're so lucky to be in a place where we get to talk about what matters most in the lives of our students. And the retreat program is just a sliver of that. It's all part of the seed planting that is, we are here for something greater than ourselves. a life rooted in faith, in close relationship with God, is better for people than not, and we get to do that and build that and work that in, and it's so much more than how we pray or going to Mass. I mean, both really important things. Mass being the most important thing that we do as a school, but how we treat others, the way we serve, creating a culture of service rooted in faith is different than service for the sake of service. You know, it becomes less about how it makes me feel and more about what we're doing for the world around us. You know, even the way we study, the way we do our job and the tasks in front of us, rooted in faith, is different. You know, again, it's not about us, but it's about something far greater, what the Gospels teach us and our responsibility to those around us. So I think we're really lucky to live in that kind of environment, you know, a faith-based environment with, by the way, really faith-filled people, adults, who are walking with these students on this journey. You know, I think we're lucky for that.
Yeah, for sure. So at some point you obviously had gone back or were going back to school to work on some administration degrees. And so where was the beginning of your interest in that? Did you have aspirations or what was the seed for that?
Yeah, no, I did not have aspirations. Lou at the time, Dr. Peters, when we were getting hired, I just had my bachelor's degree. He said, I will never forget it, in the new faculty meeting. This ended up not being true, by the way, but you all will be the last group of new teachers to be hired without a master's degree. And I thought, well, if I want to hang around here, I better do something. And there was no way, I mentioned how hard it was for me to do a bachelor's in theology. There was no way I was going to go get a master's degree in theology. And so I thought, all right, I got to find something. This is how dumb I was at the time, too. So I started it in 2008. And so I still was only like 26 or 27. I stumbled upon a master's degree in Catholic school leadership at SLU. And I didn't realize, and I swear this is true, I didn't realize that it was like principal training or administrative training until I walked into the class the first night. And I'm going, oh my God, all these people want to be principals. Like, I just want a master's degree, you know?
A piece of paper.
And this is interesting. I think the Catholic school stuff would be interesting to me. But I didn't realize it was really training for principals. And I ended up just loving the coursework. I loved the people that were in it. People like your wife, Molly, who I was very close with, who's a phenomenal Catholic school administrator. And everyone in that cohort program, I just loved. And I loved the content because we were talking about not necessarily theology, but we were talking about the church, the people in it, and what the role schools play in it, and the operation of it all. And it was all interesting. And so I ended up loving it, but I still never saw myself as a principal. I kind of thought maybe I was preparing myself for a job at a different school in a leadership position, maybe in campus ministry, or other things that could have come up somewhere else. Never ever thought that I would be an administrator at Chaminade.
So how did that come about, or how did your next stop was middle school principal?
Yeah.
What's the logistics or the backstory there?
Well, so I went into the doctoral program. We graduated the master's degree in 2010. We went straight into a doctoral degree. Many of us who were in the master's program. We were the first group, by the way, at St. Louis U, the first cohort to get an EDD with a focus on Catholic school administration or leadership. And I was finishing in 2013. I had my oral comps, my written comps in October of 2013 on like a Thursday or Friday, or maybe Saturday. It was a Saturday. And Monday morning, Phil Rohn walked into my campus ministry office, totally out of the blue, in Frischie Hall, sat down, and only a way that Phil can do, and I'll forever be grateful to Phil for this, but he sat down and said, I wanted to let you know that Lou and Mike are retiring. Lou Peters and Mike Band are retiring at the end of this year. Father Ralph's asked me to be the principal. Peter Vilhouten's going to be the associate principal for student development, and I'd like you to be the middle school principal. And I was a house dean at the time, and so Phil and I had gotten to know each other well through that. I think he really valued Pete and I's work in campus ministry. I think he saw that as something that was not a strength of his, not that he wasn't passionate about it. As a matter of fact, Phil is an incredibly devout, faith-filled man. But the work of ministry and religious formation was not something he was comfortable doing without the right people, and wanted that to be a part of his team. And I said, well, can I think about it? And he said, sure. I remember, sure, you can have a week. I was like, okay, thanks. So I immediately called Carolyn and said, how about this?
So it wasn't something you were pursuing. It wasn't an application process. It was
not at all.
Out of the blue. Yeah.
No, and it was a controversial hire in some way. I mean, as controversial as things at a place, a school.
Sure.
But among our colleagues, I think that it was a head scratcher. Controversial is a strong word. I think it was a head scratcher. I don't think people quite understood the fit with the middle school. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it was going to be something for me to throw myself into too. Like I told you, I loved Mike Bander, and I really respected him a lot. I loved the middle school. I remember at one point saying something to Pete, months before this, about my doctoral project maybe being on the value of a middle school being embedded in a high school program. And Pete smirked and said, well, you need to hang on to that, because he knew.
Gotcha.
Phil had been talking for months.
Gotcha.
So it was a little bit of a head scratcher for people, I think. I think some parents didn't quite understand. I think some of the middle school faculty was like, I like the guy, fine, but is this the right person, And you know that going into it, and so you get to do, you lead with that because you know that people are thinking that, and so you get to kind of be vulnerable and admit to what you don't know and use your strengths, which to me was relationships. I was going in there with relationships with the kids. I knew I'd be good at that. I knew I could get along well with the faculty. I felt confident, although it took a couple years to get there, that I could handle kind of the culture of the school, the middle school, the discipline, the bullying issue, whatever the things that would come up. And I also knew that I at least had the academic background to talk about teaching with the context that I had never taught at Chaminade, and so I needed to tread lightly with the teachers. I wasn't going to sit there and tell them all how to teach, because from their perspective, you've never taught middle school boys, which was true, It worked out beautifully. I had so much fun in the middle school, but that's how it came about, that Phil saw something and took a gamble that I will forever be grateful to him for.
What are you maybe most proud of from your time in the middle school, whether it's the initiatives or changes or tweaks that you made? Is there something or a couple things that stand out?
Well, it's, and I've been lucky in both of these jobs, the middle school job and now as the president, that nothing needed to be fixed. I've always said it's a much better position to be in, keep it going, than fix it, save it, help it. And that wasn't the case with the middle school. It was really just to not get in their way and to support. And I've always viewed administration as this, and Chaminade is in this position. Not every school is, but we are. What do you need to do your work? How can I support you? And so it ended up being a lot of conversations about the student behavior, and which is, every school talks about this all the time. It'll never be perfect, because kids are imperfect people. But what kind of systems can we put in to hold the kids more accountable? What kind of systems can we put in to be sure that the students are being asked to be their best? And so we did a lot of work together with that. So you say discipline, and that really wasn't what we needed. What it needed was culture. And I think we made good strides over the years of building the family spirit, but also having kids rise to the occasion and be their best. It was hard. It'll never be perfect. There were days we were really bad at it. I was really bad at it. I have a lot of regrets from specific interactions with kids over the years. But for the most part, I think we did a good job with that. I'll always be proud of the way we made kids feel known. When I was in the middle school, students were known and loved, and they knew that. And so I'll always be proud of that. We did a lot of great work with teaching. I think they had a chance to roll the dice and take risks and try new things. Tim Pendleton wanted to flip the classroom my first year, second year, and we did it, and we learned a lot through that. And then he came back and shared with the other faculty about that. John McCarowitz and some of our foreign language teachers wanted to do some really new, and they're still doing it, but some new stuff on language acquisition that was very different than the traditional language classroom. And it's like, all right, man, let's go. Let's do this.
Right.
And we tried it, and we tried new things, and he learned a lot about it. He's a great teacher because of that experience. He's a great teacher because of who he is, but I think that experience made him a lot. So there's a lot of examples of that kind of stuff. I think we hired well. We brought in a lot of great people into the middle school. I was very proud. Laura Greasy, Jack Twellman, Brian O'Shaughnessy, Adam Weinbright, John Kelly came in, Mary Kate Galvan came in, Josh Hannock came in. All people who are still here that I got to be a part of, bringing them in, and I'm really proud of that.
You mentioned earlier the benefits of a middle school being a part of a high school. Can you touch on that topic a little bit? And it's not unique here in St. Louis, but we're one of the only few, and maybe it's growing. It looks like it is growing in the area, but what do you see that benefit as?
My gosh, so many. I think so many benefits to it. Like there's operational benefits. Access to a high school campus is unbelievable, and our high school campus, because we have a high school campus that has always had a middle school, and so we've got the space for all 7 grades to exist. We've got 10 basketball teams as an example, and we've got the space to pull that off. We've got 5 football teams, we've got 5 lacrosse teams, we've got all these groups, and how lucky are we to have the campus to support that? There's nothing like, and the house system gets a lot of credit for this. There's nothing like seeing a 12th grader walk up to a 6th grader and talk to him and give him a high five and make him feel loved and known and respected. I think we attract teachers to the middle school who want to be part of a high school environment or an upper school environment or older environment. We pay our, salary perspective, our middle school teachers are on the same page as our high school teachers. So we're attracting a different type of teacher, I think, in that way. And so there's all these operational benefits. There's the student experience, meaning they have access to the campus and access to the best teachers. But there's something about building the community. I mean, 6th graders get to go to the pep rallies and the homecoming games, and they get to go to the state championship, and they get to be a part of the musical or the plays that you're putting on with the best actors in St. Louis that are at Chaminade. It's just all one big 7-year experience for the kids who start in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade or 9th grade. But for the middle school being a part of the high school, I think it changes the middle school lives. What it does most, other than those things, what else it does is it prepares them for success in our high school program. Because there's this cohesiveness among departments. We don't separate hardly anything. And so our English department is 12 down to 6. And so you're working to prepare them for success in that program, And they get to do things like our language program, where you get to take a level of high school language in 7th and 8th grade. Our math program, where you get to propel yourself as a 9th grader into sophomore classes. Can't do that if you start at 9th grade. I mean, you can. It's much dicier, I think. It's much more challenging. And so there's benefits academically, there's benefits socially, there's benefits operationally to doing the middle school at the high school that I think cannot be replicated. Never mind how we do the middle school, because you're right, new folks are coming, and new schools are going to try this. It's going to take a very long time for any school to try to do what we've been doing since 1910, and I would argue for the past 35 or 40 years have been experts in. It's going to take other schools a really long time to get to that, because we devote the time and the energy and the resources into making it really good.
So let's talk about your last transition into being the president. Again, give us a little backstory on how that happened. Father Ralph was looking to transition out. How did it come about that you were the guy and your interest in that role?
Years ago. So let's see, in January of 21, we announced his retirement. So I'll say maybe as long ago as 2018. and maybe even before. I remember sitting in Ralph's office, and by now we have worked really closely together for a number of years, 6, 7 years, campus ministry too, so maybe 10, 11 years he and I got to know each other. And at one point, I'm sitting in his office talking about something else. I don't remember the question, but this is how he planted the seed the first time. Well, you know, when you replace me, you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. And he had a desk here, and he sat, and you sat in a chair facing this way, you know. So he was right here, and I remember going, "Oh yeah, what? That's how it happened." Well, he goes, "Yeah, you know, I'm not going to be here forever, and I think you might be a good person to consider replace me when I retire." Oh, Father, you know. And my line was, and it was true, I was the happiest middle school principal in the world. And when I tell you for 8 years, I woke up, I jumped out of bed almost every day to go be the middle school principal. I loved it. I said, "Father, I'm having so much fun. I'm having so much fun being the middle school principal." And he said, "Well, I want you to think about it. This is a couple years away, but I want you to think about it." And he started doing things which I'm really grateful for, because he knew what my deficiencies would be in that job. You know, when you come from the academic side of things into the business side of things, there's a lot of learning to do. So he started doing things like, hey, there's nobody who can go from the school, which this wasn't true, but there's nobody from the school who can go to this advancement conference. Why don't you go? Tell me what's going on in the advancement world. Okay, Father, sure, you know. Actually, I don't even know if I knew it was an advancement conference. I think he said it was the CASE conference, and we send somebody every year, and I'd like you to go. Well, okay, advancement, okay. So it was kind of his way of starting to expose me to that world. And I very quickly learned that I think I would enjoy that part of it. And so he and I just spent a lot of time talking about the challenges of the job, talking about what the school might need in the next couple of years. He'd bring it up, and then we wouldn't talk about it for months. Bring it up, wouldn't talk about it for months. In the summer of 2020, maybe before COVID, I can't remember, I got a phone call from another school in town that said, "Hey, our president is retiring. We'd like you to consider, would you be interested in the position?" This must have been the summer of 20. And so I took the call. I wasn't real interested. I wanted to stay here. That's not true. I might have been interested had Ralph and I not kind of been talking, but we hadn't talked for a couple months. And it kind of made me feel like, well, I wonder if something else is brewing. And I wasn't going to go and ask necessarily. But I went and took a meeting with the other school and was interested. And so I came back and just told Father Ralph, I said, "Look, I don't want to play games about this. I got this call. I took the meeting. This is interesting to me, but I'd rather stay at Chaminade. Much rather stay at Chaminade." And that moved him a little bit to, there had already been a succession committee out there that I didn't necessarily know about. Meaning there was a group of like 5 or 6 former board chairs, and Ralph were determining his succession and his retirement. And so a couple weeks later, the current board chair at the time called and said, "Hey, I'd like to have a meeting with you." So this would have been in the fall of 20, maybe the summer of 20. And he just said, "I want to let you know there's a succession committee that's been meeting." It's actually interesting from a leadership and governance perspective. Very few people would be interested in this, but you know, they discerned a national search, and to their credit and to Ralph's credit, you know, people aren't beating down the door to do the job of president of Catholic schools, and rarely has there been, not never, but it's been hard for schools that do these national searches to find success in that. And it has been done in other places. SLU High's got a great president. CBC just hired a new president that I think is going to be really good. He's from the outside of St. Louis, both of those guys. But I think Father Ralph just kind of thought, you know, if we know what we got, the devil you know.
Right.
And so the succession committee went through a process of, let's move forward with Todd, and get to know him a little bit better and see if this could be a good fit. And so I got a phone call from the board chair, John Eilerman, wonderful person, wonderful alum, wonderful supporter of the school, and become a good friend of mine. And we just spent some time together for the next couple of weeks. And then I started spending time with the succession committee. Mark Heffernan, an alum, former board chair. Jerry Thomason from the class of 1964, former board chair. Pat Whedon from the Office of Sponsorship. We just started spending time together, and the rest is history.
Good. Good. So what, to stay with Father Ralph and the transition, so we could do a whole podcast on just this, I'm sure, but what do you think is the legacy that he leaves? I mean, obviously it's huge, but distill that down a little bit. What's the biggest element that he left behind?
Well, what people don't say enough about, we love to talk about what he did for the school academically and financially. Every program in the school is better because of him. There's great stories about where the athletic program was when he became president, and his commitment to the board to work on that and make it really what it is today, which is competitive and an important part of our school. There's some great stories about where we were academically. His decision to hire Stephanie Krailman, and the way in which he and Jim Gerker made that decision, I think is a transformational time and point in history, because Stephanie, I think, had a vision for academics. But what people don't say enough about Father Ralph was, and I think most importantly, was how good of a priest he was, a pastor to us. He gets so much credit for the business of the school and the success of the school, but people forget that at the end of the day, he was a Marianist priest, and he was really good at it. The way he cared for us, I think about the way he cared for us when John Lawrence died. I think about watching him from afar when a student or an alum passed away. I think about when Jeff Morris, I don't even remember what year Jeff was, maybe 2009, 10. Jeff died in a car wreck right before school started. I didn't know him, I was still new. But I just got to watch Ralph work through that, and it was like, for those of us who felt maybe an obligation to be there for the kids, you also knew to kind of get out of the way and let Ralph do his thing. Obviously, the hundreds of stories of weddings and baptisms and funerals, and his yes to that. He was a great priest. So a great school leader, no doubt about it. Really good boss. John Eilerman would refer to him as a benevolent dictator, and he was. I mean, you knew where you stood with Ralph. You knew he cared about you, but you also knew that he had a bus to get on, and either you were in or out. Just unbelievable. And 33 years of leadership, and this place what it is today compared to what it was then. My gosh. He gets so much credit. But as a faith leader and a priest, I think he should be held up as most valued.
So just to be transparent or make sure everybody's on the same page here, you were supposed to have a year with Father Ralph sort of as the in-waiting, or whatever the official title was, and then unfortunately he gets sick and passes away at the beginning of that. So how did you have to adjust there? Take us into your mindset of, I was going to have a year to ramp up, and now I'm in the hot seat.
Well, the truth is that we probably had 2 years before that we were spending, that I was preparing, with or without Ralph. I was starting to see that I wanted to prepare for it. And then I had a year so we announced it in January of 21. He died in August of 21. Sometime in the fall of 20 I knew. And so I started doing things to prepare myself for the job. And so I felt like, and I was really grateful for that, because I felt like we got to mourn his death. I felt like we got to celebrate his life, because there was no organizational chaos that we had to deal with. How lucky we were that there was already a middle school principal in place, that I was already out of there and oriented towards the president job. So the transition ended up being way more seamless than it probably could have been had it happened a year earlier. It's a blur. That whole time is a blur. It's a weird position to be in when you don't feel like you're the most qualified or the appropriate person to be kind of shepherding the community through this. but you had to be because that's the direction we were going. And so you rely on the giants in the community, Phil and Pete in particular, the board, alums, long in the tooth teachers, the province. We were, really at the end of the day, the province was Ralph's caretaker. And so the dance of communicating with Father Oscar, the provincial at the time, and including Brother Epi and things, and Brother Jesse O'Neill, who's the head of education, and you're spending all this time communicating with them and letting them grieve and manage things. Sham and I felt like we should be responsible for all of this, but we weren't. The province was his family, and rightfully so. It was just a very challenging, hard time. One that could have been harder had his vision not been, and the board's vision not been executed, whether it were me or somebody else.
Sure.
We got to continue doing the school stuff because of it. So, but it was tough. It was a tough year. The whole school year was a challenge. And we were just all over the place, trying to figure out what we needed to do. And I'm so grateful for Phil Rohn and Jack and Pete and Brett and Beth. In particular, Bob Schnurr. I can't say enough about Bob Schnurr. Mm-hmm. He is a highly valued person on this campus. Not well known because he's an introvert and he's in the business side of things, but an unbelievable asset to the school. And so because of them, we just kept going, and I got to figure stuff out. So yeah, it was tough.
Well, talking about vision, his vision, let's spend our last portion of our time together talking about your vision and the vision where the school is headed in general. Let's talk about a couple things that are sort of hot button or happening right now. The dorm renovation, mm-hmm. the chapel renovation, not dorm renovation, but the Marinus Hall construction, and chapel renovation. What's the latest on those here at October 1st, 2024? Yeah. Where do those stand, and what's our next steps there?
Well, super exciting. Ralph's vision, but he wanted, before he retired, to have the dorm figured out. Not necessarily groundbreaking and that kind of stuff, but he at least wanted us to be in a position to move forward with that project. So we actually spent that whole year getting us there, due to the enormous generosity of a few friends of Father Ralph and the Chaminade family and resident alums, and all these people came together to let us be able to do that. And it's been, as it goes with this kind of thing, it's had its ups and downs. It's an exciting project. It doesn't come without some frustrations. It doesn't come without delays, and people are involved. When people are involved, it's messy. But I'm anticipating that our new students will move in. I think it'd be exciting to move in before Christmas break. I don't know that that's going to happen, but certainly I would be very disappointed if they did not come home for Christmas break to a new dorm. So the minute we can move them in, we will.
Give us a little picture of what that building is going to be in terms of the size and the scope, just for folks who may not be as familiar.
33,000 square feet, 43 student bedrooms, so 86 student beds, 6 two-bedroom apartments, 4 prefects. The big draws and improvements will be that the students, 4 students will share 1 bathroom. So we're getting away from the community bathroom model. Every floor has kind of a marquee lounge where the guys will really have a place to hang out, socialize, relax, be together. There's quiet study spaces. There's this really cool patio being built with a fire pit and a barbecue pit, and just off I guess it's the south side of the building. And new. That's really it. New, modern amenities. I think they're going to be really excited about the private bathrooms.
Yeah, sure.
The rooms aren't a whole lot bigger than what we have now. We wanted to be really economical with the space, so we made the rooms what they needed, but we went all in on these lounges so that the kids would come out of their rooms and be together. So it's going to be awesome, and they're going to be really excited about it, and I think it'll be a great recruiting tool for our school. We had to make a decision: are we all in on this dorm program or not? And we're all in on it. We've been a boarding school since we were started in 1910. What our resident students bring to our school community is unmatched. They're a critical, vital part of our school, and we're all in on it. So this was a big step in being sure that we're a boarding school for another 115 years. Yeah, and the chapel, really exciting. We're doing an addition to the back. Going to house a sacristy, a lobby, the mechanical, so the heating and cooling systems need to move out of the old dorm, which is where they are now, into the chapel and own space. So we're totally gutting the inside. Don't think it stains the floor. We tore out the altar, got rid of the communion rail. We're going to put in more seating. We're getting new pews. We're adding movable chairs, bringing the kids closer to the altar. The thing I'm most excited about is we're putting the soundproofing fabric acoustic paneling in the ceiling, so we're getting rid of that concrete look, and hopefully we'll be able to hear in it, because right now you can't hear in it. Putting some stained glass in. That'll be finished hopefully sometime in January.
Great.
So it's coming quick.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what's next? Not necessarily in terms of buildings, maybe, but what's sort of your priorities? What's the next steps that Chaminade needs to take as a school, and where's the board? Where's your vision for what the next 5 years, next 10 years? What does Chaminade look like?
So our leadership team spent a couple days this summer doing some strategic planning, and a really important part of that was developing a vision statement for the school. Something that is aspirational, something that is also attainable, inspiring, can be done. And so we spent really a better part of 2 days coming up with the statement. Chaminade will be a leading educational institution. I should start over because the most important part. Rooted in our Marianist charism and Catholic faith, Chaminade will be a leading educational institution with innovative programming, state-of-the-art facilities, and a global educational community, where students love to learn from teachers who love to teach. And if you break that down, we're going to have the best teachers with students who are eager to be here, with the facilities that match that enthusiasm and excitement, with programming that is forward-thinking, that positions us to prepare our students for the future, in a community that's global, not only with the resident program, but in the way that we have experiences, all rooted in us being a thriving Catholic Marianist school. And so everything we're doing is pushing us in that direction. We're doing a good hard look at our campus. We have spaces that we need to get caught up on, whether it's classroom spaces, science and engineering and STEM spaces, whether it's athletic facilities. It's the way we look at our library right now. That space, the whole west end of the main building, is getting a good look. And we're trying to figure out how to do all of that. That's all very expensive, And so how can we do this and get us caught up? We're looking at our admissions and marketing, and there's this new competition popping up in town. Are we prepared for that? Of course we're prepared for that. How do we get the message out? So we're spending a lot of time on that. I'm always looking at and concerned about the tuition model we use. Can we stay accessible to every student who wants to be a part of the school? Right now we are. Yes, we can continue that, but we have to stay on top of tuition control and financial aid and tuition assistance. What's that mix? How's that all work to keep us thriving? How do we take really good care of our teachers, our number one asset, the most important part of our success? How do we stay in a spot where we can take good care of them, make them want to be here, this be a destination for them? It's not only salary and compensation, we're paying for the master's degrees, paying for the professional development, building a community that makes them happy. So those are all things we're looking at. We think we can do it, and everything we're doing is driving us towards those things.
Great.
Yeah.
Two last questions for me. What maybe it comes from what you just said there, but what's one thing that you're the most excited about for the future for Chaminade? To put you on the spot here, whether it's a tangible thing or if it's just an intangible vision thing. What excites you about the future of Chaminade?
This might not be that interesting to other people. I mean, I'm always excited about our students. And they're just phenomenal. And I think we're going to continue to recruit really great students. But Chaminade has an opportunity to do our advancement work in a way we've never done it before. And we're in the middle of building that right now. And I'm really optimistic that we're going to get this huge community support to help us transform the school in a way that we've never done that before. And it is really exciting to me. It's the next 3 to 4 years of my time is drawing people in and inviting folks in, alums, parents, past parents, friends of the school, drawing them into the school in a way they've never been invited to be. And I think the results of that are going to be excitement and engagement and growth in really crazy good ways. So I'm excited about that. That's not real edgy. I'm very proud of what's happening with the Modern Learning Program, with the Principals Council and Learning Consultants Counseling Department. I think that's going to be really cool. I'm most excited about the advance.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so our last question, which is the same last question we present to everybody, our school motto, obviously, Esto Vir, to be a man. So we ask everybody, what does that mean to you personally, or what's your take on, what does Esto Vir mean to Dr. Todd Guidry?
So the part of our leadership team exercise this year too was around mission. What do you say when people ask you what your mission is? And what we've decided is, because if you can ask every faculty member, everybody might have a little bit different answer. But I think we'd all latch on to that final sentence, preparing our students to be the men the world needs them to be. What's your mission? Esto Vir, to prepare our students to be the men the world needs them to be. And for me, there's no better time to be focusing on that in a world full of people we don't need. Good men, good husbands, good fathers, faith-filled, service-oriented, meaning a life oriented towards other people's lives. That doesn't mean a life of poverty. That doesn't mean a life of church ministry, but that means in the way they conduct their life, it's oriented towards building people up, life service to others, loyal, the principles of loyalty and integrity and character and all of those things for sure. But at the end of the day, I want good, decent men who think, who believe firmly that God is their best ally in life, and that living a life of service to others is the most fulfilling thing. And I think we do that. I think we're doing that. I get to meet really great alums all the time who are, in one way or the other, changing people's lives in their own unique way, whether that's as a businessman or a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or in the military. But you get to meet all these people, business guys, and they're all, I think, their goal is to build a life for other people. And I love that. That's what we're about. So,
great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all you're doing for our school and for the vision that you have for us, and for sharing part of that today with us and showing your backstory as well, too. So thanks, Todd, and thanks you folks out there in our audience for joining us for another episode of The Hilltop.